Where's the switch?
It's on the side. It's the green button.
Which green button? You mean the microscopic little dot? Thanks, Biggie. I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for coming out. It's such an honor to be here. Thank each and every one of you for taking the time out of your Saturday afternoon to come and listen to this crazy bedlam, you know. I'm not quite sure what the word is for it, but thank you from the bottom of my heart. I want to thank Guitar Center for letting us slip in here and make some racket. Everyone here, thank you so much for your help in putting this together. We really appreciate it. I want to thank Greg with Yamaha, Matthew with Yamaha. But mostly I want to thank you guys, because without you guys out there, none of this would even think about be happening, you know. I want to thank Yamaha for the beautiful instrument that I get to abuse day in and day out. I don't know how they sound out there, but...
Amazing.
Oh, well, I guess you have to say that, huh? Yeah, but it's a blast playing these beautiful things day in and day out. And I'm so blessed and thankful to have spent the lion's share of my career in the company of this kit. Not this particular kit. I've never played this one until today, but thank you, sir. Got a little neck going. Thank you.
Any more?
No, I'm good. Thank you. That being said, I'll just say a little bit about kind of how I got started. I was raised in Florida. I was raised in southern Florida. My dad was in the Navy Coast Guard. So you guys Damn guitar players. You guys thought you were rid of me, didn't you? But I'm back. And I have to say, I've never had the privilege and honor of working in the state of Florida where there wasn't just crazy-ass rock folks coming out and just inspiring the heck out of us. So I want to thank you very much for doing that over the years, decades now, many decades. But you guys never let us down. Whenever we show up, you're always there to party, and I appreciate that. I started as a young boy, you know, and wanted to play all the shiny, flashy stuff, you know, as a young boy, as every young boy does, until I found out how hard it was getting through the rudiments. I switched to sax for a while until the neighbors, you know, tried to execute my entire family tree. So I gave the sax up and I switched to guitar, and I played that for a while. But I gravitated back to the drums in pretty short order. And I started working my way through the rudiments. Had no idea what time was. I thought it was, you know, a magazine or a clock. Had no idea that it was an instrument of accompaniment. I was just a kid. And my mom said, if you'll get some proper lessons, my dad didn't want to know, but my mom said, if you get some proper lessons, I'll, you know, match whatever you come up with, mowing lawns and delivering papers, so forth and so on. And you can slowly build a kit. I got a practice pad first, obviously. And I got a snare drum, and a hi-hat, and then a kick drum. And then my mom said, let's go to this music store that was not far from where we lived at the time. It was in Tennessee. And there wasn't a drum teacher there. It was not the resources that you guys have. You click on, you know, on TikTok or YouTube or whatever, you got everybody has 15 views of what's going on the feed and stuff. None of that stuff was happening, you know. You were on your own, you know. So my mom took me to this, it's called War Lines for Music. And there was this goofy looking guy in there, and he said, well, we don't have a drum teacher, but come into my office and I can maybe point you in the right direction. So I went in his office, he had a practice pad there, and he asked me to play a couple of rudiments, single stroke roll, you know, like a 6-stroke round, and I knew most of them. And he pulled out this strange little contraption and put it on his desk and gave it a shove. It was a metronome. I had no idea what it was, you know. Since I didn't play piano, I didn't know what it was. And he said, play a single stroke roll and play it with that. And I had no idea what he was talking about. That was my first experience or first lesson in learning what this instrument's all about. It's first and foremost an instrument of accompaniment. And so he let me borrow that metronome, and I took it home, and I had to relearn everything because there was no way I didn't have to answer to anything when there wasn't, you know, the click going. I didn't have anyone to answer to. I could speed up and slow down and feel really great about myself, you know. I had to essentially start from square one. And it was a really long, hard lesson. And when I didn't mean to say jokingly when I said it's a really hard instrument to play. There's a lot of tedium involved, learning the rudiments, learning to play in time, so forth and so on. And so that's why there were so many of my friends that were playing drums, and they all just fell by the wayside, you know. Maybe I was just too stupid, too hard-headed, you know. I have a very, very extremely low IQ. I'm not quite sure what it is, but I just wouldn't take no for an answer, you know. I stuck with it. And then I got a tom-tom, I had a kick drum, a hi-hat. I got a floor tom. It took me forever to go from the stick, go ba da 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 da. I gotta go ba da 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 da. But when I got the floor tom, trying to go over here, I mean the most simple, you know, inane little rudiment, singles bar of 16, you know, 8 notes around the drums. And it was really, really challenging. But once you would get it, I wouldn't take no for an answer, and it would encourage me to move to the next step. This is for the younger guys and the younger ladies in the audience that maybe in the room that may be thinking about doing this, you know. I'm here not to teach. I don't know enough to teach anything. I'm here just to share some ideas, you know, and we'll trade out some ideas and stuff. And so what I tried to do was, after I got a little bit of a grip on the rudiments, I started just sitting down with the metronome and playing really, really quietly, because as soon as I got so loud to where I couldn't hear the metronome, I would lose the time. I didn't know it, but that was a really good training regimen. I had no idea that it was. It was just my reality, because I didn't have in-ears and a click that I could put up to a level that was, you know, audible no matter what level I was playing at. And so anyway, I worked through all that stuff, and I learned then that it's harder to play things soft and consistently and evenly than it is like how I've been playing it here, darling. It's so much more of a challenge. It's so much more of a challenge to play 16 notes or 8 notes or whatever subdivision you're going for in a slower tempo than it is to play in fast tempos. It really is. It's so much more difficult to deal with long spaces before the beats than it is with really tight ones when the grid's really tight. For me, I can play fast all day long, never, you know, it's not a problem. But it's such a struggle for me to stay with the click and stay on the backside of the groove or the pocket, playing at low tempos and playing with solidity and continuity and so forth and so on. With those silly little lessons, it wasn't someone tapping me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, TA, you should try this. Try learning stuff quiet." And then once you, and in a slow tempo, and then speed it up and get loud, you know, get obnoxious and fast later, you know. It just happened that way. And so as time went by, I started experimenting more with things that I hadn't heard on a record. At that time, who inspired me to play drums was Joe Morello. He played with the Bluegrass Quartet, Take 5. It was in 5/4, so that was the first song that I learned on the drums. Nobody told me that, hey, that's too complicated for your little 7-year-old pea brain, you know. But that's what I was trying to do. So it became even more challenging. So maybe because I had these challenges early on, it kind of conditioned me for what was going to come later on out on the road, trying to deal with likes of Ozzy Osbourne and people like that, you know. I don't know. But as time went by, I would go in my rehearsal room and I would try to come up with a beat or a pattern that I hadn't heard on a record or anywhere else. That's what led me into 2 bass drums. I had a friend that was a drummer friend, and he was one of those that fell by the wayside. And I said, "Robert, can I borrow part of your kit?" He said, "Sure, man, you can have the whole thing." So he left it in my little rehearsal room way back in the back behind the house so my dad couldn't hear. And I put his bass drum on the left side where the hi-hat was. But previous to that, I'd put the bass drum to my left foot and a hi-hat on the right side and play backwards for a number of weeks just to experiment and have something different to do in my rehearsal room. There was no plan, there was no genius, there was nothing behind it, just to escape boredom, playing rudiments all day long, all throughout the day. And so when I got his bass drum, I started splitting things up and doing a bar of 16 around the drums, and I would put 2 beats, not like Bonham was, but Bonham was using one bass drum, using 2 notes at a time. I was trying to get into multiples of 3s and 4s and 5s, and breaking the bar, the voicing up through the 16th note feel, the bar 1 bar feel, you know. And it opened up some really interesting things for me. And so when I would play, before that I was playing to play a quad, I would go snare, snare, kick, kick, snare, snare, kick, kick. Well, when I got 2 bass drums, I'd go kick, 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 snare, kick, 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 snare. It's the same pattern. It just sounded different and sounded heavier. At 137 pounds and 5'10", I'm constantly trying to sound heavier. And so it was a way to do that, and it let me do something with my left hand that I wasn't occupied playing one of the 8th notes in the pattern, and so I could do something visual. and I was trying to incorporate some visual things into my playing, not because I had particularly seen anyone out there doing it. I'd seen marching guys twirling and stuff, but no one like, going ballistic on the kit, and trying to incorporate it in a way that brought the video side of our instrument into the play. And so these are things that you don't get by going to PIT. You're not going to learn these kind of things by working through the book of rudiments or stick control. These are things that come to each individual and your form of expression and how you embrace your instrument and find a way to express yourself on whatever instrument it is you're playing. I'm sure everyone in this room is a drummer, right? There aren't any secondary instrumentalists in here like guitar players. No keyboard guys in here, I'm sure. No, I'm kidding. I endorse and support every musical instrument on the planet. Kazoo, whatever it is, I don't care. I'm just joking. And so I was trying to find a way to sound not different for the sake of being different, but to express some creativity. When you have something to say and you don't say it, I'm of the belief that it never gets said. The multitudes don't get to hear it. Just think if Randy Rhoads would have stayed in his mom's guitar school and never went out and went in the studio and recorded and expressed the glory that was inside of him. Can you imagine if that would happen? Who else would have said that? And who could have ever have said it as eloquently as Randall Rhoads did? And my point is that no matter how fast you are or how slow you are on the instrument, don't get discouraged if you're young and coming up and you can't do what you see guys, some alien on TikTok doing. You want to hear it in a musical context. You don't hear very little of that in a musical context. And I'm not downplaying chops and all, the real technical and the technique. Without technique, you're dead in the water. My emphasis that I try to express and try to not inspire, but to encourage young drummers coming up is to creativity. Taking the instrument and applying the language that all people that play this instrument learn, which are the rudiments, and applying them in a way that are unique to yourself. And that's the real challenge, and that's been the challenge that I had when I was coming up. And I would just sequester myself. I didn't have lessons. I don't say it as a bragging point. If I have any regret, I wish I would have stayed in drum corps for a year or 2 years. That would have given me a rudimental base that I could have really expounded on later on in my career. I have soft spots in my playing as a result of that. I went out and started working and touring instead of staying home and shedding longer. Instead of going through college and graduating through college, I signed up for the pros when I was out of grade school, so to speak. Not exactly that, but I wish I would have stayed home longer and learned more about the instrument before I started going out and trying to be a professional, Because a professional usually is someone who does it 24/7, 7 days a week, That's the only difference between an amateur and a professional. A professional gets to do it all day long, 7 days a week, where an amateur has to go to his day job, So that's what kind of put me wherever I got to in my career, I think. Finding ways to play things on our instrument that are a little bit different, not for the sake of being different, but for the sake of being creative, And so John Bonham, to me, really personifies that. When I heard Led Zeppelin for the first time, and I heard Good Times, Bad Times, that was some new information. I mean, the stuff that he was playing, even though those were figures and beats even that had been played before, like in a jazz context, it was da-da-da-da. Well, he just flip-flopped it. He went da-da-da-da. And John Bonham never played multiples of two on the kick at one time. Thank God he didn't play two bass drums. We would all have committed suicide many years ago. Can you imagine what would have happened? Because if that wasn't true, then if you could play on one what you can play on two, then we'd all just get one drumstick in a bag. Who needs two? I'm not saying anybody needs two, but there's things that you can do with two bass drums that you just can't do on one. And someone may contend, well, you don't really need to do them if you can't do it on one. And the gospel chops guys, they don't seem to have any problems, do they? But those are just little points and things that I learned when I was coming up, and things that I tried to bring into my own playing because I didn't have a tutor or a mentor or someone said, maybe you should try this, It was just my fellow bandmates. I would be practicing something silly, and they said, why don't you try that in a song? And most of it, again, it was just stuff trying to keep myself from being bored in my drum room. But they heard something in it that I didn't hear, and I didn't even think there was a musical context in which it would work. I didn't even think in those terms. It was just an exercise. But as time went by, I got a little bit more confidence in doing it and playing things a little bit differently than I'd heard other people play them. And I think that it's paid off for me throughout my career. And what I play on two bass drums now is really child's play, is what compared to what's going on right now. It's people are defying the laws of the universe, gravity, and everything else on two kick drums now. It's crazy, scary what's happening. The bar is so high now, it's crazy. I don't know where it's going to go. I'm interested to see. But that's kind of my story, and I was blessed to get a kind of a national level gig when I was just in my teens, and work from there. And it was just the business was a lot less populated then. It was harder in some ways, but it was easier in others. The playing field is pretty much level. The times change, but really the only thing that changes is the names and the faces. The same rules and fundamentals and principles still apply. To if you want to show up on time, don't be a drug addict. It's a 24/7 gig. Keep yourself healthy. You can't be a professional drug addict and a professional drummer. They don't go well together. They just don't. You'll say, well, I'd rather be out getting high instead of playing, and your body falls apart, and it's kind of physical, You have to take care of yourself and stuff. So booze will kill you. It'll take your time someplace else, Well, he's drinking today, so he's a little behind the beat. Oh, he's doing a little blowzine today, so he's a little ahead of the beat, When he's sober, he's dead on. There you go. It works. So I try to encourage that as well. But I'm not here to give advice. I'm just here to maybe offer a little encouragement to anyone that is considering doing this for your lives, for your vocation and not your avocation. It's a lot of fun, man. Let me tell you. It's put me in the company of people I would never otherwise be blessed to be in the company. Randy Rhodes, John Sykes, Gary Moore. I'm not just talking, and I'm not singing their names because they're not here any longer. I felt that way when I was working with them, So it's taken me around the world more times than I can count, and it's just put me, and it's blessed me far in ways I could never, ever, ever deserve or earn from what I've done or what I haven't done, So I encourage anyone that's considering doing this, go for it, Stick your neck out a little bit. Don't just get discouraged if you can't play a blast beat at 225 BPM, Only freaks can do that, And don't get as discouraged if your sensibilities and your musical sensibilities are in a style of music that's not particularly popular. Try to learn as many as you can. Learn the things that other people want to learn instead of doing what I did and only learn the things that I wanted to learn. Try to learn the things that other people want you to learn, the other styles of music. If you look, a good example of that, Mitch Mitchell. He was a drummer with Hendrix. Iconic music. I don't know, the young ones in here, if you're not hooked on it, listen to Electric Ladyland, those early Hendrix albums. Mitch Mitchell was a big band drummer. Jimi Hendrix is from who know where. No one is quite defined where Jimi Hendrix came from, but it wasn't this planet, I don't think. But he hooks up with a big band drummer, a British big band drummer, and Mitch Mitchell was just played bass in a blues band, little bars all around England. He got those three guys together, and what they came up with collectively was so unique and so different. And you got a big band drummer playing with little tiny sticks and still used an orthodox grip when he was playing with Hendrix. And Hendrix playing, who knows what he was playing, and the melding and the mixture of those almost contradictory styles made something bigger than the individual parts. The whole was bigger than the individual parts. Another, the Police, Stuart Copeland, awesome drummer. He's a reggae drummer. He'll be the first to tell you, ska. He's a ska guy. That's where that element in their music comes from. It didn't come from Sting or Andy. It was from the drummer, and so it was an element in the Police music that made it immensely popular. Who doesn't love the Police, man? And that influence in their music came from the drums. Even though there's not a chromatic scale, there's still melody with our instrument. It's not chromatic melody, it's a different kind of melody. It's a sound source melody and so forth. Well, that's how influential those two guys were, and they were just the drummers, They weren't Buddy Rich that got pulled to the front of the stage, but through his sheer precision and dexterity and technique. It was their personalities and stuff that was ingrained in that music that made it something that it otherwise would not have been. And I think the maximum personification of that point is John Bonham. He was a badass funk drummer. That's what John Bonham did. He was a funk drummer in a funk band. Robert Plant was singing in a funk band too, and that's when he met John Bonham. Jimmy Page, nobody knows, well, in Yardbirds, everywhere else. John Paul Jones, very talented university trained keyboard guy, and he was playing bass. When those guys got together, the funk drummer and the guitar player from Who Knows Heck and Robert Plant, a soul singer, it didn't sound anything like that. And so John Bonham, how influential was John Bonham on Led Zeppelin's music? He was incredibly influential because they stopped when he left. They stopped when he left because that died when John Bonham passed. You can't, it's like the same with The Who, when they carried on for a little bit, but when Keith Moon left, and when you compare Keith Moon to John Bonham, skill level, there's no comparison. So it's not one's better, my dad can beat your dad, or my dad can play faster than your dad. The whole point that I'm trying to make, guys and girls, is that you have a chance at this if you want to do it. All it takes is this, and this guy up here, you get him on your side, oh, there's no stopping you. There's no stopping you. You get the big guy on your side, there's no stopping you. So that's kind of my story, and these are little things, and these are principles that are just fundamental principles of life that I've tried to apply to my instrument. Show up on time, be as honest as you can when people want you to play something and you're not, that sounds corny, I have to put a dress on to play that or whatever. Try to play it, you never know. When Steve Smith was doing that thing in that Journey tune where he's just playing quarter notes on a kick drum, Steve Smith would have rather committed suicide than to play 2 bars of quarter note of kick drum. But he did it, and it was one of the biggest songs Journey ever had, I mean, he was playing all kinds of stuff, polyrhythms across it, but he kept that quarter note going on the kick drum. He'd never played a figure like that. He'd be the first to tell you that. But it made him a rich man to where he could go do Vital Information throughout the year and go do 4 Journey gigs, and he's set up for the next 5 years, So that's kind of my story, and there's so many places you can go on this instrument. We get to use almost all of our limbs. These keyboard guys are going like this, man, I'd fall asleep. I'm sorry, I'd fall asleep, I don't know how they do it, Guitar guys are going like this, trying to hide the riffs from the other guitar player. Drummers share everything. We're so stupid, we give all of our tricks away, We're willing to do that. The camaraderie within the drumming community, I don't know if it's because we've been pushed to the back of the stage for so long, we'll just talk to anybody, I don't know what it is. But that's kind of my stupid philosophy, and I've had the honor of coming and playing in the state of Florida. I lost one of my closest friends and one of my real musical heroes, Randy Rhoads, not far from here, so it's kind of bittersweet when I come down in this part of the country. But the compassion and the musicality of you guys in the state of Florida is unmatched anywhere that I've ever traveled, and I'm not saying it because I spent a lot of my formative years in Florida, and because I've played here a lot, because I've played all over the world a bunch of times. And there's nobody that kicks butt like you guys do, man, I'm telling you. And it's a privilege and an honor to be here. So all those silly things, I'd rather not have this in my hand. If you guys want to, again, I'm not here to dispense any wisdom. I don't have any. The only way I could get dumber is to get bigger. But if you have anything, I get a lot of hair care questions, stuff like that. Dieting question, I don't diet or the hair care thing either, but I'm happy to ask any questions. Hopefully music or drum business or any kind of music related questions would be nice. But if you want to talk about your your wife or your husband, I can do that too. Any questions?